We return on Southeast Texas Weekly. Much more to talk about and only a few minutes to do it. Joining me to talk about this, Don Brown, Democratic former congressional candidate. Good to see you again.
Howdy.
It's been a while since we've had you on the program. Kent Batman joins us, Hardin County GOP chairman.
Good to be here, Kevin.
Thanks for being here. And of course, Nathan Buddy Reynolds.
Kevin.
What do we make of this matter of the Iranian nuclear deal being just weeks away? Now, Southeast Texans think of this in these terms, I think. There are so many Southeast Texas young men and women who have gone to the service. There's, I think, a real concern in America today that American boys are going to end up in some kind of military conflict again in the Middle East, and if so, likely there's a real reality anyway of fighting against the Iranians because of their power in the region. You're starting to see the Iranian nuclear deal become a real situation. We just had the Netanyahu address to Congress. And again, we're just so close to the deadline for the Iranian nuclear deal to be made. I guess the question becomes, will the administration stay tough, or get tough rather, in the eyes of some critics, or will they essentially go with the same framework of a nuclear agreement that Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu talked about in his address to Congress? He found it far too lax, Bibi Netanyahu.
Except for there's one small problem with that. The Obama administration's embargo against Iran and the trade policy and the isolation of Iran is what brought Iran to the table. So when you say that the administration's been weak, it's sort of funny because they're the ones that were able to bring Iran to the table and get them to have a serious dialogue.
And upon arriving at the table, they got everything
took
they
anything
wanted.
It'd be tough for any of us to compare Benjamin Netanyahu to Barack Obama and say that Obama is the best world leader. And there's no comparison. Netanyahu knows the Iranians way better than Obama does. So, regardless of what this thing shows up and ends up being, the perception amongst the entire world is going to be that Netanyahu's right and Obama's wrong.
Among the chief issues here is a letter by some 47 Republican U.S. senators to the clerics of Iran. An unorthodox move, to be sure. Is it the only thing that could have been done on the conservative side to try to say to Iran, any kind of deal that you make now may well not be the deal for life? Because among the big criticisms here is that, the deal lasts only 10 years. That was the Netanyahu argument, is that any kind of nuclear deal would be a 10-year deal, and that in the life of nations, as he put it, is not a tremendously long time. So maybe there are some...
We would like to get a deal with Iran, either to prohibit or to postpone their being able to manufacture nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
Right now, we don't have that kind of deal. And for the Republican senators to write a letter like that to undermine...
Does it undermine the president?
Well, certainly it does. It undermines his authority and his authority in the minds of foreign leaders, and it's terrible.
It is the president's job to make foreign policy.
Better cooperation between the legislative branch and the executive branch of our government, we could have a deal that went past 10 years.
Yeah, but the president has been so forthcoming in working with Congress. I don't understand what the holdup is.
I think
a
both sides
freshman
have failed on
congressman.
that.
I'm going to say that tongue in cheek because
a freshman senator fires off a letter to Iran. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, but it is within his rights, and it's not without precedent. We've got Pelosi doing it, we've got John Kerry doing it, we've got other senators with Republican presidents have done the same.
Nancy
kind of
Pelosi
thing.
says she sort of went there on the
with Syria.
because the Bush
did do that with
people
Syria.
wanted her to.
But there's a difference between what she did as one of the leaders in the House versus a freshman senator who truly did not actually have any place sending that letter.
See,
to
that's
begin
the
with.
breakdown.
I would say it would make it that much worse that as a leader of the Congress she did that, as opposed to a freshman senator that we can just say, hey, he can afford to make a mistake. She should have known better.
Well, the Republicans at least just find this deal.
Well, there's a law. They're not supposed to do that by law.
He should have never invited
the Logan
Netanyahu
Act,
to address
arguably is the reason they should not have done that. That is a job of the U.S. president. But that brings us into the area that I wish we could get to, and that is the idea that among conservatives, nothing on this deal is really workable. That it's so far out of bounds with what the president and his administration have brokered a deal that's so far out of bounds with what both the Republicans in the Senate and Bibi Netanyahu in Israel think is appropriate. And again, Netanyahu in his to speak to his points that he made in his address to Congress, it's annihilation for Israel if a nuclear-powered Iran, a weaponized Iran, decides to, as they have said they want to, annihilate Israel.
The other thing about the 10 years is it buys 10 more years for regime change in Iran. If you look at what has happened, if you look at what has happened in Iran within the last 10 years, there has been an uprising and of the citizens wanting to improve their lot, and they have. What was it? The Green Movement.
Well, there was even a
4 or 5
dissident
years
movement
ago.
for some time,
Right.
which of course the administration
and
did
this is
nothing
something
to
this
support.
is something that is building and is building support inside of Iran. So this buys time for a regime change in Iran.
But is that kind of time the time necessary to ensure that Israel's not threatened on a daily basis by a nuclear Iran?
I think, well, sure they're threatened, and they're threatened on a daily basis. They don't want Iran to have nuclear weapons, and I can understand that. Mm-hmm. But there may come a time that Iran does have nuclear weapons. There may come a time that other people in the area have nuclear weapons. Most countries, they want nuclear weapons to protect themselves.
And right now, there are some who believe that they already have nuclear weapons, and that the stalling in of the administration has allowed them to have it.
Our strongest ally and the best expert in that area is pretty convinced they don't have them, and he's also said they will never have them. Yeah. So I think that's one of the things we can.
You see
another
Rossuric scenario developing.
What happened to the ones in Iraq had?
He's talking about Iran.
I understand. Yeah, what happened to the ones in Iraq?
Don't go there, We were told that
I've got 15 seconds.
He was talking about chemical weapons.
They were talking
weapons of mass
also
destruction.
buying yellow cake.
We're still looking for
them.
No, they found the chemical weapons
for enrichment of uranium.
And with that, I've got to run. Thanks so much for being with us here on Southeast Texas Weekly. We hope to see you next time. And again, tell your friends about our program, and be sure to catch us online at 12newsnow.com. Thanks for joining us again. Have a good day.
Southeast Texas Weekly, brought to you by the Modern Vein Surgery Institute at Privity Clinic for Surgical Care.